Hi everyone. We're really happy you all can join us on this Zoom session. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Maya Samawi. I'm director at Ayam Gallery and daughter of the founder Khalid Samawi. So therefore, my relationship with Samia isn't strictly professional, but actually personal. I've been lucky to grow up knowing such a gem as Samia Halaby. I'm just gonna go over our brief history, Samia and the gallery, and then I'll walk you through what we're gonna do today. So living in New York City, Samia found it difficult to find a gallery. She felt rejected, so she decided to focus on her political and activist work, which helped her unleash her artistry to new heights. On a trip to the Levant, Samia had passed by Damascus and heard of Ayyam soon after its inception. She made her way to the gallery but left very quickly because she had planned to leave for Amman, Jordan that evening. My father heard of this, gave her a call, and insisted she would come back to Damascus after her trip to Jordan to meet. So although skeptical, Samia came back, and I believe my father convinced her that we believe in her and her work, and that we only have her best interest at heart. So 13 years later, our friendship and relationship has grown, and we're happy for the role that we had in each other's growth and development, and specifically to have played a role in Samia's journey, and honored to have helped her focus on her true calling, which is painting. Many of you are familiar with Samia. She's a Palestinian abstract painter and digital artist who has been based in New York City since 1951. Samia's involvement in academia throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s has heavily contributed to her evolution as an artist. Being ahead of her time, Samia always pushed herself to experiment with media, including computer-based kinetic art, very early on. So today we're excited to take you through some of Samia's thoughts and ideas through a moderated talk and a studio visit, followed by a short film by Munir Atalla. The short film will be followed by a Q&A. So if anyone has questions, please make sure to put them in the chat box on Zoom or in the comments on Facebook, if you're on Facebook. So moderating the discussion is highly esteemed Dr. Barbara Stelly, who got her PhD in contemporary art history at the Sorbonne in Paris, and then worked in several institutions and museums across Europe and the US, such as Centre Pompidou in Paris. Based in New York, Stelly curates, writes, and lectures about the visual arts and architecture. As a historian of modernism, Barbara is an advocate of the importance of postmodernism. Before I give the floor to Barbara, I would like to introduce Munir Atalla, a young filmmaker completing his MFA in creative film production at Columbia University. I would also like to introduce you to Lara Arafe, Samia's curatorial assistant, who is with us in Samia's studio. She won't be speaking much, but she's playing a big role and really did help in the organization of this event. And finally, a warm thank you to Faisal Saleh from the Palestine Museum US.
Thank you.
For extending the session's broadcast onto their Facebook. So if anyone knows of someone who wasn't able to follow the Zoom session, it will be on their Facebook later, saved right there. And so Barbara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maya, for this introduction. I'm thrilled to be here today and to have the pleasure to do this walkthrough of Samia Halaby's studio and living space. So Maya already gave you the program for the day. So we're going to jump in right away. We are on the sofa, just below one of Samia's beautiful paintings. So Samia, this used to be your living room. And now it is an annex to your studio. Could you tell us a little bit how the paintings end up here?
It's true, this used to be my living room, and now it kept helping the studio, which is over there. And the studio has really seeped into everything in my life, including my bedroom. But have a way of handling the paintings. I usually use the wall in front of my dining table for the painting under examination.
Excuse me, Samia.
I finished it, I like it, I hang it there, so every morning I see it. If I pick it as a favorite new one, it comes over here, because again, I see this walking back and forth. This one was finished, maybe 3 weeks ago or more, I can't tell. And I had started a new series based on hand movements, calligraphy, scribbling, our own movements, the movements of everything, and curvilinear manner, not just straight lines. So it was the first really strong, big one of that series. It took a long time. It was in my studio and on Instagram for maybe a year, but it arrived. I'm very happy. So yeah, they were surrounded by paintings here.
So yes, we are, and you mentioned the space in front of your dining table. Should we go there and show the first station for the paintings?
Yeah, of course.
Something's wrong with the sound. Sammy, can you hold the mic to your mouth? Put the mic for this one, the one in your mask. Can you try speaking?
All right. Okay.
So here we're moving toward the dining table, but I see that we're passing one of those stretched canvas in your living room. So can you explain a little bit how you do this still yourself?
Yes, it's not the only thing that I do when I work in here, sometimes on the wall. But I bought this ladder when I do big paintings, so because I was falling off the other ladder. And here I brought it in the living room so I could stretch my paintings here. And I usually I pay a great deal of attention to the linen, and it's parallel to the edge of the, and I climb the steps, staple, get down, turn it around. It's a lot of work. It keeps me healthy.
And what kind of linen do you use on this?
I just get as nice high quality linen as I can, because it lasts a lot longer than cotton. It's much tougher.
Because I noticed, like, when I look around the studio, so here we have two paintings. And this one is called Flying Squirrel, right? How is this one called?
Those two paintings are hard to believe, but maybe these two were done at the same time. This was the end of the geometric group that I've been doing. And I wanted to use the brush mark and not be always doing hard edge. And so each movement was a brush mark. But at the same time, I was trying to work, and this was also for going on for a long time. But this one's called cross currents, river cross currents, because I tried to make movements vertically and some horizontally that interpenetrate and interact each other.
Samia, go closer to Barbara. Go closer to Barbara.
My desire to be real with my marks led to this painting. And,
sorry, Laura, the only person we're hearing well is you. Maybe you need to be unmuted and they need to be muted.
Which the red painting over there. Remember. And this is no longer under consideration.
Hold both. Hold both. I don't know which one has it.
It is finished. I signed it. I'm happy with it. And there are influences from calligraphy, but I called it squirrel flying because it reminded me of the joy of seeing a squirrel flying from soft branch to soft branch.
So one of the things that I noticed about this painting is that the canvas comes through a lot more than the one with the cross current. So that's why I was asking about the linen also that you have stretched. Is that the same time?
This is a raw, an early version of linen before it's totally purified. And it's very rough. It's very hard to, but the texture is much like something that is like crayons on a paper surface.
Yeah, it has more of a graphic feel that is very, very lively. So what I love when I come here is that, in fact, I don't know that everybody can see it, but the living space and the studio space merge. So we really are in an environment where creation dominates. The fridge is painted, the floor is painted, the walls are painted, the cabinets are painted. And this all leads you toward the studio. So the paint leaves tracks everywhere in the space. So here we are in the studio, and I wanted you to guide us through the elements of the studio, but also first to start with a simple question for you. How does your day begin in a studio?
Well, to go back to your comment, you notice that my palette is very close to the kitchen. So all the leftover paint goes to the kitchen. And my days don't always begin the same way. Recently, my evenings end the same way. Just before I take a shower to go to bed, I come and I turn the lights on and take a quick look at the more recent painting.
Okay.
So they permeate my mind and my thoughts, and I wake up with the thoughts.
So which one is the most recent painting in the studio here?
This one is the most recent. Well, those two, I worked on several. But to go back to your other question, it's not, you put hours in the studio and it's very important. But it's important that a painting is on your mind. So when I spend many days painting, it helps a great deal.
And these clearly are not paintings that you do on a stretched canvas, but they look like they're cut. So these are hanging sculptures that you make, and are mobile, and I love to play with them when I come here. And can you tell a little bit, everybody, what they're about?
It started when I was cutting up a painting that wasn't very good. So I thought, well, instead of following the advice that you don't get too precious about the good parts, I thought I'd cut them out with the scissors. So from one thing to the other, it led to me cutting pieces and stapling them onto the wall. But it was also at the same time as I'm thinking that to analyze different kinds of spaces, ones that are big, and ones that are small, like cars and people, big ones like sky, buildings or pavement. And I was making paintings that way. But these, layering them that way. But these were sometimes canvases, sometimes painted on purpose to be, sometimes cut to be part of this, and sometimes cut and then painted. So there were many little.
I see.
but I call them hanging gardens. And this one
This one is a little bird.
or a fish, a swimming fish. See, this one will ruffle your hair, come under it.
This one is one of my favorites. Okay, so everybody can see the studio. There is an acoustic table and the rack with different silk screens. Can you speak about your works in different media and experimentation?
Yes, I can. I did that in the 80s. And a friend helped me build it. This box below has 9 light bulbs. And I have a rheostat over here. And this piece of metal gets hot enough to put that egg on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I made my own wax sprayer. And I used to put paper and draw with wax. And this one is the drying rack, old-fashioned silkscreen drying rack from Sheila Marbain, who closed her studio. We used to do a lot of monotyping together.
And then here are the screens for your kinetic art.
Yes, I'm sorry it stopped running, but that's too bad. But this I used to work on a great deal in the 80s, 87, 88.
We'll see some in the movie, so we'll see them screening in the movie.
Excuse me?
In the movie, they will be screening, so in motion, we'll see them.
Yeah. And over here is a paper mache piece.
Can we see it well?
Yeah.
So they're your three-dimensional work. Which period of time did you explore with papier-mâché, Samia?
I think I began exploring in the early 80s, actually, when I stopped teaching and I started becoming a leftist. And I was doing a lot of Palestine activism. I began to see the world more clearly.
And so here is the table, and I had asked you to talk a little bit about the process of creating a painting, and if you had any preparatory works and drawings. And so here is a sample of how you go about it. Can you talk about it?
Sure. Early in my life, I used to prepare drawings and a still life and carefully plan how the painting would go. And then I would start the painting from the still life and keep working until it was finished, all night, whatever. And slowly, I stopped doing that. It merged into a more mature, more intuitive process. So you said those were explorations, and that's exactly true. All of them are explorations, and the large paintings are really the top of the
iceberg
food chain, so to speak.
They're the result of explorationary works. So let's speak a little bit about these two. They've been in the studio for a year, you were saying? Yes.
They have been. Those two in front of us have been in here for a year. The small one is only about a month, less than a month.
But it's covered with marks almost more than the ones that are been here for a year.
They're influencing each other. I usually work on 3 or 4 paintings at the same time. There was an olive tree painting sitting here, and it influenced, and it's like the foliage of the olive tree also merged here. But Barbara, looking at these paintings, I have a question to ask you. You know, all my life I've said, recent years I've said my paintings are about reality. And here I think what I've done is create a space without perspective, without overlap, without any other depth clue than light and color. What do you think?
I think that, you know, the question of space in your work is driven by the question of light. And when you look at the two paintings on the wall, Lara, you're able to show them? Yeah. There is a sense of all over that saturates the surface. And the marks are directional, but not pointing to one direction. So it's directing your gaze to the edges of the paintings. But the interlacing marks, to me, they look a little bit as if the light is filtering through evenly. So the sense of then direction, a little bit like when you're underwater, you don't know where up is, down is, left and right, you get disoriented. There's an all over that opens up.
That's very interesting, because when I was making these paper mache, I was thinking of underwater, because then there's no up or down. Box and I could turn it.
Samia, we
could
can
grow
hear
in any direction. So yeah, that's very
a little
good
bit,
insight.
I think this one, especially the orange one, has this idea of the space is surrounding you when the light is diffused evenly. The one to the left seems to be opening up as it moves up. There's more density at the bottom. So in that sense, perspective pops back in, right?
And this one is influenced by foliage and branches.
A lot of your work makes me think like these you call hanging gardens.
Work makes me think of gardens. And the relationship with nature and seasons is often present in your color palette and even in the mark making.
It is. It is. Light and color is something I studied carefully. Especially with, I have two big influences on my sense of color. One's the education I had at the University of Cincinnati, which was about how we perceive physiologically our eyes and the scientific understanding of illumination and light. And then the Mansell system, which is a great way to understand all the attributes of color. And then Joseph Albers with the relativity of color and luminosity and light. So color is number one, it's really very important. And I remember when I was teaching, I would say, let me learn from my students who always squeeze the primary color on their tube and all their paintings look red, green, and blue. And then I'd look around and say, look at the subtlety of color as I'm walking around, and I should try to escape that sort of dictate that comes from colors in a tube.
So there's something about the process that I wanted you to share with us, because each time I come in the studio, you just finished your day and you say, oh, this painting is so difficult and this one is so easy. And at the end, when I come months later, both of them are equally beautiful. So there is a relationship that you have with each of these canvas when you work on them.
Yeah.
And that dynamic, can you speak of that dynamic, that this exchange every day that happens between you and the work?
It's a creative process, very complicated. Every time I think I've got it pinned down, I say something. Tomorrow I say the opposite. So it's searching. You're literally searching for something new, direction that you share with other people who are also looking to the future. So you try to see what's around you, what people are thinking, you try to empathize, and also see what you think. So I love hearing what people see. And I don't care how professional or educated, because everybody, there's a little truth in what everyone says.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, there are the paintings that are like a snap, I'm lucky, and they get finished maybe in 2 days and make me feel guilty. But I like them at the end and they're good, maybe better than the hard ones. And then there are the hard ones that take forever to realize.
So you're saying that you work on these works at the same time and they help each other come to fruition. But when you look at them, these two seem to be of the same style. But the little one, for example, is very different, as well as the one that is behind me. And then the foliage here is maybe the one that is the closest to mimicking nature, rather than being a metaphor of, right? So how do you switch from one mode of painting, one mode of thinking, I suppose, to another within the same day?
This one behind
This one here?
It's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it happened before this one, but what they all share in common is a certain limited depth, a kind of space. A space I've never seen in my painting before. You know, the hard edge painting, they have space, they have depth, there's overlap, there's interaction of color. But this is,
Okay. The interaction of color, sorry.
but this is a different space than the hard edge ones. I can think of like between me and the building or the street and the many buildings is a specific type of space. But if I go to a tree foliage and I'm just sitting in the tree, there is something everywhere. There's a leaf near me, a leaf fall, and I see anything precise, but I do see space.
So you do paint this from memory of the experience?
Of many experiences. There are many memories of many experiences. So yeah, but they are a different space. Like the one squirrel flying. You know, the squirrel is flying in a limited space, and he's flying in the space. It's not this tree and that tree, or this building and that building. Maybe that's not making sense. I don't know.
No, I think it does make sense. And the space of the painting itself is limited to some extent, right? You can open the back of it or give the edges an opening so that we, in our imagination, prolongate that space. But it is still only a portal within another reality of the pictorial space.
Thank you.
So I think this is our time to show the documentary made by Munir Tala about Samia. So we are going to screen for you this, and you will have to ask questions to Munir. If you want to use the chat box on Zoom or the comment page on comment section book, you can enter your questions as the film is screening, and I will ask them after. You will also have a chance to ask questions to Samia after we dialogue with Munir.
And please put the word question or Q, because there are many comments. So preamble your question with a Q or the word question. Thank you. Art is part of the society. It always reflects what happens around it. Painting is a visual language that influences everything. I see abstraction as an imitation of reality. It might teach you how to look if you open your eyes and want to look some more. I was born in Jerusalem, where all my parents and parents' were born. I used to like drawing. My margins of my school books had little sketches in them. My grandmother's garden in Jerusalem, that influenced me visually a great deal. There are places that impact you visually in that way. They enter your sensations. I can almost feel them in my hands right now. And so when I'm looking at the painting, often I want that sensation back. In 1951, my father and mother had come to the decision that it was safer to bring their family up in the US. I did not want to come. I was 14 and it was to high school. I couldn't decide between the sciences. It was my mother who finally said, "You always loved art, why don't you study art?" I gained tenure at Indiana University and decided that really I wanted to be in New York, but it's hard to just pick up and have no money and come to New York, a city I don't know anybody or anything in. I moved in '76. I continued trying to get a gallery for years. It was total rejection. In this world, people don't see, if you're Palestinian, don't see what you make, they see you. And they don't like us Palestinians. Slowly, it just dawned on me that it was worthless to keep struggling because it became emotionally very difficult. I began to have an anxiety attack almost every time I entered the gallery. And they can be very, very rude and very cutting in New York. I became more an activist. We were fighting for the right to return to Palestine, to our homes, for equality, the whole new system. And that really liberated my artwork and liberated me. I became very productive as a painter at the time, and very explorative and experimental. I was able to see the beauty in the world, and that was very energizing, empowering, and created color and optimism in my work. Anytime that there is a forward motion in art, it is using the technology of its time. I'd been interested in the computer for a while. I felt I should try it and find out if I'm really an artist of my time. So I bought an Amiga. I fell in love with the results and was glued to the Amiga for at least 2 years, combining what we see in reality as we move with what we hear and putting them into abstraction in motion. Those artworks were, in my consideration, some of the most advanced thinking I've done in painting. My friends basically thought it was great fun. So did I. I used to giggle every time I saw one of those Amiga pieces. They are very funny, but in a nice way. I work on 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 paintings at the same time. When I enter to get going, then the paintings begin to permeate my consciousness. The paintings do not arise out of feelings. They arise out of thinking. And I'm very scientific in the way I think and plan. But when I do them, I trust my intuitions. Fulfilling every whim that comes along. Balancing back and forth between what I intuit is right and what I want to do. And which one wins is hard to tell. When a painting is going badly, I'm feeling badly, but not because my feeling is in the painting. I'm reacting to frustration. But when it's going well, I'm very happy because I've captured something I've wanted to capture. When you come to the painting, your brain is smarter than your consciousness of things is. So you've seen these things before. You've realized living in the city, that there's a pattern to the way cars move in the city. You're only learning that what you have experienced can become language, can be visual language embodied in this painting. So you like the painting because you recognize in it what is already in you. We're never asked to think about what remains in our memory after we walk a street. 5 times, let's say. And so there's something remains in the memory. As I was saying about Palestine, something remains that I almost feel it with my hands. I can make it, I put it in a painting, but it's not a photographic image. It's what remains visually in memory. It's something palpable and real. What your iPhone or cell phone is telling you when you take a picture is only a teeny slice of what is in front of it when you take the picture. It's an image of a fragment of time of reality. But a new abstraction can result from a new way of seeing. I'm 82, soon 83. I think it's the best stuff I've done. Now, people are buying my paintings, so I can afford to keep painting. It's nice that it happened at this stage because I'm less likely to be put off my path than I would have been maybe when I was younger. It was very strange. With all the trying and trying over a period of 30 years, I couldn't get any serious dealer to represent me in this atmosphere. And I think it's me they object to, not my work. My act of resistance against the propaganda and brainwashing of our time is I want it clear and obvious that I'm an Arab and a lover of the Arab world and a Palestinian, born in Jerusalem, and it's my city. I was thinking before I started selling with Ayyam that all of my big paintings are one day going to be taken to the garbage by, whoever cleans out my studio. But now I feel like they won't be. I'm very glad.
Perfect. So I hope you guys enjoyed the film. I have a couple of questions to ask Samia. Barbara, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Perfect. So first of all, in the film, Samia, you say your kinetic paintings are some of the most advanced thinking you've made or you've thought of. Can you expand a bit on what you mean by that? Why is it the most advanced thinking?
We're here in the forest. Give us a second.
We didn't expect this right now, but one thing that's started with my computer art, I often call it the most advanced thinking I've done in painting, because I'm combining my reactions to sound, my perception of sound, of motion, of the environment I'm in, and with visual material, and rendering them into a moving image with sound. And this is in the more recent paintings, I feel it is very interesting that I've arrived at something where I'm making a soft space, a soft painterly space, without it being perspective, even in hard edge paintings. For example, like the one we saw, Pyramid, the space is, or even the one homage to Leonardo with all the movements, even there is something more concrete, whereas here you feel you're almost walking through a pillow fight with feathers all over the place.
I think the term like soft space is very good, as opposed to, it's not even hard space, where something seems unpenetrable, and something soft where you feel that you can penetrate through the colors.
Yeah.
But this was the time for us to speak about Munir's film. So I was going to ask some questions to Munir before coming back to Samia, okay? Munir, I have a question for you, and then we'll take questions from the audience. The question I have for you is, could you talk about your meeting with Samia, how you got to meet her, and how the idea of the movie came to be?
Absolutely, and thank you so much to everyone for having me today and for screening this film that I'm really happy with. I met Samia through family, actually. She's my grandfather's first cousin, so somewhat distant, but I moved to New York City about 5 years ago. I moved there to start working at NBC News as a journalist. And Samia, I had heard about Samia through my aunts and through family members who sort of spoke of this legendary figure, a painter, this wonderful painter from our family who lived in New York. So I was very lucky to get to know her through family, but we met very late in life, relatively, for somebody who's related to me. But we met up in her studio and went and had Thai food nearby, and we hit it off. We were fast friends, and we started thinking about ways that we could share some of her incredible work with the world. I've always been so blown away by all of Samia's paintings and the studio space, and also her incredibly principled activism and her really incredible work on so many important issues of our time. So it was a very organic sort of collaboration. I came with a bunch of ideas for Samia, and she picked some out that she really liked, and we started playing with them. I was just kind of a fly on the wall of her studio. I remember the first few visits, she would be talking to me as I was behind the camera, and the more used to me she got, I faded into the background, and she was just painting as if the way she does every single day. It's incredible labor. It takes so much rigor and grit and daily energy and work, and that was something that was really inspiring to see as well. That's sort of how this little film came to be.
So you had access to these wonderful archives. What are the memorable treasures you found in there? Because some of it's, it must have been trips through time, right, to be able to access all of these. So could you talk about like what a little bit the discoveries you made through this?
Yes, so Samia has done an incredible job of archiving her work and photographs and articles about herself, etc., which is a huge gift to future generations. And she shared with me sort of access to parts of the server that she has, where there are an incredible amount of archival photos and high resolution paintings and all sorts of things like that. So, it was really a treat to be able to go back literally decade by decade and see the trajectory of her work. I think, whereas her work is so incredible today. Going back through time, you can see how it got there, and also how how each decade of her work has built on top of the previous one. I think it's so rare that you have a painter like Samia, who's really at the prime of her career today, in her 80s, and I think that's something that's so exciting and inspiring about her work as well. Maybe she's a little shy with me gushing like this. He really does deserve that kind of recognition, I feel. And part of the film was I really wanted her to be sort of celebrated in our community as the sort of icon and legend that she is. She already is, but she's so modest. I mean, even in the film, you see, she says, oh, now people are buying my paintings, so I can afford to keep painting. That's the thing that's on her mind. It's not the fame or the celebrity or any of that. It's just that dedication to the work that's really so pure and inspiring.
You also highlight her connection to the world around her, right? To her neighborhood. You film her outside of the studio, walking by the water, eating ice cream. Her joy of life comes through beautifully in the movie. I know that the work in the studio is extremely the center of her life, but at the same time, her relationship with New York City is also extremely important. So could you speak a little bit about your choices for filming?
Absolutely, yeah. I really wanted to, Samia has lived in this studio since the 70s, I think. So she's really just as much an old school New Yorker as she is Palestinian, so that's something that's such a cool combo and something that's so rare. I think that Samia, so much of her work is inspired by the natural world, but also she doesn't necessarily draw a line between, plant life and flora and fauna and city life, and that's something that really, I think, is so beautiful in her work, that like she sees the man as part of nature in a way, humanity as part of nature. And you can see sort of that in her work, that, traffic and stoplights and, reflections on city windows inspire her just as much as the way a leaf grows or the patterns of light falling through leaves. So it's really cool to see something like that come to life in her work. And something else that I really wanted to show about Samia was that she is very much engaged politically in her local sort of organizing scene, just as much as she is globally. Just as much as she is a Palestinian activist, she's also very much aware of her place in American society as well, standing in solidarity with various movements there, especially with indigenous struggles. I saw in the questions, Professor Kawanui, I think, was asking about the connection between Samia's work in Hawaii and her work today. Samia was a professor at the University of Honolulu, I believe, or a lecturer there. And one of the paintings in the film is called Ni Hao from Palestine, I believe. And so it's the one that sort of twists onto the screen, and it's a beautiful one that really I love it. It's the one that sort of expands beyond the four corners of a canvas or a stretcher. And that was made during this period of time where she was sort of making these connections that to our generation feel very fresh and very, new almost. But looking through this history, we found that, or at least I found that, previous generations of Palestinian activists have been doing this work for so long and building connections on the ground and, putting it into the atmosphere through art and through activism. And it was really inspiring as a young creative to see that, we really stand on the shoulders of giants, and Samia Halaby is one of those giants.
Let me see if we have questions coming from the audience. Laha?
Yes.
Let me comment to the people in Hawaii and the professor who asked. Yes, that was called For Ni'ihau from Palestine, dedicated to the Hawaiians and to their right to self-determination and their hope for liberation, and my wish for that, and also dedicated to the working class in Hawaii. So that was a very special experience. Hawaii was something really amazing, both the gentleness and sweetness of the people, of the Hawaiian origin who also seem to influence everybody, and also the amazing beauty of nature. And my feeling is so sad about the damage that's being done to it. But yeah, thanks for the question.
We have a question in the audience. When do you title your paintings and how do you choose the title for them?
The titles are unpredictable. Sometimes they just help remind me of which painting it is. Sometimes I call it the red one, except sometimes there's too many red ones. I can't remember which red one. And sometimes it's about the subject matter, like walking down West Broadway in the evening, or for Ni'ihau from Hawaii was about it was one of the abstractions where I was seeing the basic principles used to colonize Hawaii and to colonize Palestine and to colonize the world, really. And so it was about these basic principles. And that's how the titles work. And also very important, I always think of people who are going to look at the paintings and my relationship to the viewer. So many times I feel abstraction seems to be hard to understand. So I want people to trust themselves, but I also want to give them an avenue to see at least what I thought.
Absolutely. There's another question.
Yes, go ahead.
So your choice of color palette is mesmerizing. Do you begin with a set palette or does it change and morph into something different?
I never start with a set palette, but there have been times when I woke up planning to paint and had an idea, and those are rare, but once I woke up thinking of breakfast and honey, and I then decided to make a painting that had yellow and orange as the darkest colors. So it forced a certain attitude about the painting. And sometimes I think, like recently, I've done so many red paintings, I decided I needed to do a green painting. It's a little unpredictable, but, and mostly, you know, when I'm thinking I want to do a green painting, it's not a green painting, it's the relationship of colors, different greens we see in nature, the bluishness of some greens and the yellowness of others, etc.
So I have a question for you, because you live in the middle of the city, right? And yet your work alternates between an urban influence in the nightlife that you can experience around the studio with the lights of the traffic, and you can see that sometimes in your paintings, and there's a sense of time that comes through the nocturnal time, right? And this kind of disorientation that we can get in the city when we're blinded by lights. And yet, despite the fact that you are in the city and in an urban setting, most of the works in the studio seem to be taking us to the land of Palestine, to the gardens of the Middle East, to Mediterranean seas, something far from even the Midwest where you grew up, and something far from New York. Can you speak about these inner travels where you take your paintings?
The paintings are always about the beauty I see. And there's a lot of New York, the appearance of New York in them. Like there's a whole series called Dance on Canal, which is about Canal Street and how people shop on Saturday and how it's almost a dance, how the rhythms of the people walking and the items being demonstrated. When I paint about Palestine, if Palestine is on my mind, I'm painting about the beauty of the land. But many of them have Hawaii in them. When I came back from Hawaii, I did a painting called Oh Hawaii. And there's a lot of Hawaii in those paintings. But when I want to do politics, I'm not shy. I don't put politics in painting, though everything in my view is painting. I put them in my posters. I want it clear what I stand for. And I don't want to make a poster for someone else. someone else's politics. It's going to be my political attitude. And it could be very strong. You can go through the web and find me holding a poster that says Israel makes Auschwitz in Gaza, which is my view of how I see it. And it is true, because everything that was done in Auschwitz is being done in Gaza to the people there. So that's not in my painting, because my painting is not about now, today, the struggles of today. My paintings is about principles and ideas that move us into the future. So this is for every young Palestinian filmmaker like Munir, or every painter who aspires, you should always feel free to put whatever subject matter is important to you. Of course, I want you to be very political. I want you to be very international in your politics. I want you to consider others that suffer, like the Palestinians do and have. But I also want you to do your profession. When people ask me, where's Palestine in your painting? I used to answer, if you need a doctor, would you only have one that has Palestinian medical experience as their medical history, as their experience and learning? Of course not. You'd want one international one. So maybe I wandered off in this answer a little bit. Sorry. Tangent to tangent.
Well, I think it's a good place to give back the floor to Maya, right? So thank you all for joining us today. And I'm going to turn back the floor to Maya so that she can thank all of us again.
And thank you, Munir. And thank you, Lara. Lara did a great job. Why don't you come back here, Lara, for a minute so people can see you.
Producer of the event.
Hello.
So thank you. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you, Samia, Barbara, Munir, Lara, and Faisal, of course. This was great. I hope everyone enjoyed it. People who are asking about the film, the link is in the chat for the YouTube link to the film. And we apologize if people asked questions and we couldn't answer, just we're short on time. Also, if you have any questions, I can put my email down. If anyone wants to ask anything to either Barbara or Samia, I can help with that. And also, we apologize about the mics. At some point, we had a last-minute misfunction, but at the end, I believe everyone heard and everything was fine. Also, finally, if you want to look at the video again, please don't hesitate to do that on the Facebook page of the Palestine Museum US. And I think that's it. It's a wrap. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Is Faisal here?
I think Faisal will close.
Thank you, everyone. I want to say hi to Sultan Al-Qasimi. Hi, Sultan.
Hi, Faisal. How are you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hi, Sultan.
Hi, Sami. يعطيك العافية. Hi, Maya. يعطيك العافية, Lara. Everybody.
Hello.
We
had a lot of fun preparing this.
It was amazing.
Thank you, Sultan, for attending.
Thank you so much, Sami. يعطيك العافية. See you guys.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. مع السلامة.